Happy Friday. We did it. We made it through another week. For some reason, I'm thinking today is Thursday, and yesterday I thought Thursday was Friday. I'm still a little confused, but that's okay because I'm sure the happy hour that we are going to watch today, and more importantly, the beer I'm going to consume, will certainly help diminish my confusion. Now, I was a couple minutes late, and I have to apologize for that. Do you know what you guys know what happened? I dropped my yarn on the floor, and it got tangled in my headphone cord. So I had to do emergency detangling of the yarn and the headphone cord, and it was all a kerfuffle, but that's okay because we made it. If this is your first happy hour stream, what we do on Fridays at 5 p.m. on my second YouTube channel, Actively Unwoke, is we watch a woke training or presentation of some sort. We watch it start to finish. We let them say whatever they want to say, and we critique it and possibly mock it and possibly pick holes in all of the things that they say because we've watched enough of these trainings now that we know what they're going to say. And, we just have a grand old time with it. And if we're lucky, we drink some beer or some wine or some cocktail or water or tea or whatever floats your boat, man. You don't have to drink alcohol for happy hour, but I'm gonna be honest, sometimes it doesn't hurt. And let's see what we have on the docket today. Today we have a webinar from, this is literally on Harvard Graduate Schools of Education YouTube page. Now, fun fact, the Harvard Graduate School of Education is the first university I ever worked for. I had an internship at the Harvard Graduate School of Education in between my junior and senior year of college. I went to Boston University, but I stayed in college. I stayed in Boston over the summer in between my junior and senior year, and I got an internship at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And so when this webinar popped up on my radar, I was like, wow, this is like a blast from the past, man. Blast from the past. Today, we're going to be watching a webinar called Leading for Equity. It is a part of a webinar series that the Harvard Graduate School of Education did, and it is featuring the following people: the superintendent from the Boston Public Schools, the superintendent of Ferguson Fluorescent Public Schools, which I'm going to guess is in like Missouri, but I'm not positive about that. I'm sure we'll find out in the course of the presentation, and the CEO of the Chicago Public Schools. Now, I was not aware that public schools had CEOs, but apparently in Chicago, public schools have CEOs. So we're going to see what they have to say. Let's look at the description. The racial inequities that exist in our nation's institutions, including our school systems, have recently been amplified. Oh, hang on. Oh, I screwed that up. Hang on. We're not ready for that yet. Have recently been amplified by the disproportionate impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on communities of color and through the racial justice movement that gained momentum over the summer. And keep in mind, this was streamed on September 24th, 2020. So we're going back a little bit. This is about a year and a half old, okay? Sometimes we go back into the archives. Sometimes we can even do, I see webinars all the time when I'm looking for webinars for happy hours. We can do webinars like 10, 12 years old. Maybe sometime that'll be a fun activity for us to do just to see what they were teaching back before most of us were aware that this crap was even going on. During this pivotal moment in American history, education leaders are re-examining how they can create more equitable opportunities for marginalized populations. If you have equity or marginalized on your bingo card, I know we haven't talked about bingo yet, but you've already got 2 words. How does one lead through crisis and simultaneously explore opportunities for positive change presented by the crisis? Join us for the future of equity, or the future of education leading for equity, as we bring together Janice, the CEO of the Chicago Public Schools, Joseph, the superintendent of Ferguson Fluorescent. Oh, it is in Missouri. I was right. And Brenda, the superintendent of the Boston Public Schools. Together, they will share their insights about leading for racial equity in their school districts. They will discuss vision, theory, strategy, and opportunity with attention to personal identity and local political context. So this is the presentation we are going to be watching today. Now, I just mentioned bingo a minute ago. If this is your first happy hour, Bingo might be a way to help get you through the experience. You can generate your own bingo card by following the link in the description below. Just go over, click your bingo card. Every bingo card is different. It is unique to you. And of course, you get your free square in the middle. And then we're going for lines or we're going for corners. Now, if I had this bingo card, I could already pick out equity. Do I have marginalized on here? No, I don't have marginalized yet, but I bet you we're going to get lived experience today. I bet we're going to get systemic racism today. I bet we're going to get unpacking today. Complicity. I think that this is going to be a good bingo day. Once someone shouts out a bingo in the chat, we give you a rousing round of applause. You don't win anything. But once someone gets an initial bingo, then we go for blackout bingo. We have yet to get a blackout bingo on this channel. I have high hopes. I bet Sin's going to get it someday. But all of you can go for blackout bingo as well. And if someone gets blackout bingo and it's not Sin, I will celebrate you, but I'll be just a little disappointed. Sin is such a trooper. She plays bingo every single week. Yes, exactly. Patrice says, mount the like button, bingoers. If you've downloaded your bingo card, make sure you mount that like button while you're there. Now, we have a couple other things to take care of before we get started. Special announcement scheduled literally a couple hours ago. I wanted to let you guys know so you can mark your calendar. Now, I'm streaming live at 5 o'clock Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on my main channel, which is just Karlin Borisenko. And the link for that should be in the description. Sometimes I talk about the news. Sometimes I have illustrious guests. Well, I've got a big deal guest coming on Tuesday. My friend Brandon Strock from the Walkaway campaign is going to be joining me on Tuesday at 5 p.m. on my main channel to talk about his experience since January 6th and the future of the walkaway movement. I am really excited that Brandon is out there talking about what happened, doing interviews, and I cannot wait for you guys to get a chance to, be a part of the chat and ask him questions and all this stuff. He'll answer any questions that you guys have. So that's going to be on Tuesday on my main channel. Now, you guys know, well, many of you, that I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke. You can pre-order it now over on activelyunwoke.com. It is on Amazon. It is on Barnes & Noble. It is on all other sorts of things. It comes out in April, but you can get your pre-order in now. But there are other things that you can do on my website, activelyunwoke.com as well. And we did one of them today, actually. Let me just go to this live events tab. And today we were privileged at noon to have a webinar with Miss Nicole Solis, who taught 350 people who signed up for this webinar how to write public records requests. Now, some of you might be saying, Karlin, I missed the webinar. Can I get a recording? And the answer is yes. Yes, you can. Now, I will be creating an archive of all the recordings of all the webinars on Actively Unwoke. I have it on the docket to launch this weekend. I will also finally, at long last, be launching the application for the Unwoke Army this weekend. It's all set up and ready to go. I just didn't want to launch it on a Friday and I had other stuff to do. But if you want to get the recording right now for this webinar, if you missed it today and you just can't wait, go over, click on the image. What's going to happen is you're going to get taken to a landing page. That landing page has the recording. Click on the play button. You're going to have you put in your full name and email address, and that recording is going to pop right up, and you're going to get to take part in the recorded version of the webinar that Nicole gave today. It was a fantastic webinar. She gave so much helpful information, like really highly practical information about her experiences with the schools and public record requests. And it was really good. And I strongly recommend everyone watch it. Now, next week, we've got Paul Rossi coming to join us, and he is going to show us clips from this crazy teacher equity trainings that he's been researching. So you can see what your tax dollars are paying for in the public schools there. You can register for free now on Actively Unwoke. Now, I want to go down to this webinar. I am doing another one on February 24th, all about an introduction to critical race theory. This is going to be similar to the one I did last week. I think it was last week. Time is but a mystery to me anymore. I think I did it last week, but I'm going to be redoing this webinar, the live version, like once a month, I think, because I want to bring as many people as possible into the fold and give them chances to ask questions. So if you missed my webinar last week and you want another live version, I'm doing this one in the evening to make it available to more people who might have to work during the day. But you can register for that right now. It's going to be on February 24th. It's going to be an introduction to critical race theory. It's going to show you examples of how it manifests in the real world, and you are going to get to ask your questions. Now, I also have this blue image up for book club. One of these things is not like the other. Now, this image looks a little bit different because book club is an exclusive for my locals supporters. Most of the events on Actively Unwoke are free, but I do have to pay my mortgage somehow. So I do some exclusive things for my local supporters. And one of those exclusive things that we're going to do is we're going to read this book called The R of the Mind. It is a fantastic book about how totalitarian regimes imprint their ideas onto innocent people. It's basically a book about brainwashing. It is fantastic. It is completely relevant to what we're doing, what we're seeing in the world today. And I strongly recommend you get your copy of the book, you read it, you come to book club on February 20th with Aaron Kinesvatter, who's a psychologist and a woke whistleblower from the University of Vermont. We're going to have a great chat about it. How you become a supporter and get access to that is by heading over to kb.locals.com/support. And you can sign up as a supporter for $5 a month. You can do it for $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. You can also make a one-time gift. I rely on my supporters to allow me to do what I do, to be able to research the woke stuff, write about the woke stuff, do videos about the woke stuff, do happy hour, organize webinar series, answer your questions, answer your emails, your DMs, all that stuff. I truly cannot do this without my local supporters. Trust me, guys, YouTube doesn't pay as much as some people think it does. And so I really rely on you. If you find value in what I do, if I've taught you something, if you appreciate the work that goes into all of this, then I hope you'll consider becoming a monthly or annual supporter because I truly cannot do this without the support I get. And in return, I'm going to give you exclusive perks. I'm going to, have 2 Zoom calls a week. We're even doing tomorrow at 3 p.m., we're even getting together for Bitchcraft, which is an open Zoom call where we bitch and we craft. So you can bring your crafts, you can bring your knitting, your crochet, your drawing, your painting, folding your laundry, whatever you want to do. But these types of things are available when you join my locals community. All right. Naruto says, did you see James Lindsay's screenshot tweet? Solid plan to drive the truckers/tires, empty gas tanks, arrest truck drivers, and move trucks. I have not seen that particular tweet. I saw some other stuff he was tweeting today about that crazy Great Reset book that he was reading, but I did not see that one, Naruto. I will have to take a look once we get done here. All right, we just have one more business before we get started with happy hour, and that's I need a beer. Now, my local beer store, I have been complaining lately because I like stouts. Stouts are like my beer of choice. And my local beer store has been crappy about stocking stouts. They stock IPAs and they stock sours. These are beers for men. Not that I don't like a good sour. I do like a good sour. But I'm always got a hankering for like a good selection of stouts because stouts are so like meaty and creamy and they just taste so good. And today, I found a secret stash of stouts at my beer store. And so I want to share with you guys what I bought. Now I have 4 beers here just because the beer ring comes in 4s. And that's just the way it is. So I have to fill up 4 beers in order to use the ring properly. So I always buy 4, but I'm not going to drink all 4. Don't get your hopes up. But I want to show you guys what I got because I'm really excited about it. First beer is Night Shift Brewing. It is called Tough Cookie. It is a gingerbread stout. Any stout involving a cookie is going to get my attention. Next up, we have let's see. This is I don't know how to pronounce the name of this beer brewery, but it's called Easy Like Sunday Morning. And this is an imperial oatmeal stout with maple syrup and coffee. It's basically a breakfast stout. Next up. Oh, hang on. This is an exciting one. This is a contender right here. Marsh Island Brewing, and it's called PB Yoo-Hoo. So this is going to be a peanut butter milk stout, and based on the can alone, it's probably got a rune that someone's going to say is like racist. I didn't design the beer can, man. But it has Reese's peanut butter cups, and it has a Yoo-Hoo type logo, so I bet that's going to be a good one to drink. But, where I'm going to start today. I'm so excited about this beer. So Smutty Nose is a brewery out of Vermont. They've been doing some interesting limited releases lately. And I am deeply excited about this one. Chocolate banana split. I mean, come on. This is either going to be really good or really bad. Let me see the alcohol content. I'm pretty sure all of these beers are like 8 or 9% alcohol content. Yeah, is it not? This is an 8%er. It is. I'm going to get drunk on today's stream. You guys are going to have that to look forward to. So usually I give you guys a chance to vote, but I'm really excited about trying this beer. And so, yeah, exactly. Patrice always said go bananas first. You know, I have to listen to Patrice. Patrice is like my ride or die, man. Okay, so let's oh, Julie says I seriously had no idea beers like this existed. Yes. This is why we go to the specialty craft beer store. Beers are like you don't buy beer in the supermarket unless it's like an emergency, okay? You go to the beer store. This is where all the magic happens. This is part of why I do happy hour. I don't drink all that much except for happy hour when I drink glorious, glorious craft beers and I get to share them with all of you. So, you know, you get to learn about it too. All right, we drink beer out of a wine glass because I'm bougie. Not really. I just think it's funny. All right, let's pour the beer. Let's see. Banana chocolate stout. Oh, doesn't that? Oh, look at the head on that. Oh. Yeah, I did see that boob tweet from Adidas. Come on. We're not gonna show the boob. I almost showed the boob tweet on my stream the other day. I was like, I'm gonna get in trouble for this. All over Twitter. Did everyone see that boob tweet from Adidas? Like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't want to see that when I'm just on Twitter. Like, I don't understand. Okay, so this is where all the aroma is for the beer. It's called the head. You want a lot of head. That means it's going to smell really good. It definitely does smell like banana. It definitely does. Oh, Patrice, don't go looking for the boobs. Don't go looking for it. What the hell was Adidas thinking? Why did they said they were trying to sell sports bras and they just showed a whole bunch of boobs. I'm like, are you going to show me the sports bra? Like, I don't need to see what's underneath the sports bra. Yo, people don't know. Oh, guys. Oh, you missed out if you missed this tweet. I don't search for it. That's up to you. I warned you. Incognito says, B, unexpected, shotgun all four and pester Victor. No, if I shotgunned all four of these beers, I would be passed out on the floor. These are 8 and 9%. These are imperial stouts, man. You don't shotgun these. These are sipping beers. It's like a fine whiskey or a fine tequila. Okay? You enjoy these beers. It's for the experience. Yeah, Metastep says they weren't the best They were not the best boobs. They weren't. And there's nothing wrong with that, man. Like, listen, I don't understand the appeal of boobs, quite frankly. I think they're kind of weird. Whatever floats your boat, I guess. It was just weird to kind of see it in the middle of Twitter. It was like, oh, God. That's literally what I did. I think I was taken aback. They pinned it. They pinned it. Listen, I wear Adidas shoes almost exclusively these days. I have to get over the fact that they thought this was a good idea. Grandma Nay, I've got my sipping weed. Well done, Grandma Nay. All right, guys. I am ready to go for happy hour. I have my beer. It's settling. I haven't taken a sip of it yet. I will update you all on that. But let's get started for happy hour, shall we? I've got the presentation up and running. I think my sound is properly set if I did the thing I should have done before I came on air. Let's just double check that. Nope, didn't do the thing I should have did. Okay, fixed it. All right. Share screen, Chrome tab, share audio. Who's ready for happy hour? We're on YouTube, we're on Odyssey, we're on Rockfin, and we are streaming now on Rumble. I am streaming on Rumble, guys. You guys requested it. I wasn't inclined to do it because I think Rumble sucks, but you know what? They're getting better. I have to give them credit where credit is due. Rumble is getting better. They are actually monetizing my videos now before a week of being on their platform. They are importing my videos from YouTube. I gotta give them credit, man. I rag on Rumble a lot, but they are making these small little improvements that are slowly getting me back on their team. But you guys requested streaming on Rumble, so I am on there as well. Make sure you mount the like button on whatever channel you're watching on. Make sure you subscribe as well. Let's get this party started. And of course, let me know if you can't hear sound for whatever reason.
With a forward-looking perspective about the most important issues in education. I'm Jennifer Cheatham, Senior Lecturer on Education and co-chair of the Public Education Leadership Project. The Public Education Leadership Project, or PELP, was designed by the Harvard Graduate School of Education in partnership with the Harvard School of Business to improve the management and leadership competencies of public school leaders in order to drive greater educational outcomes in the largest public school districts. Since its inception, PELP has partnered with 46 urban school districts from across 25 states that represent more than 5 million students annually, providing a critical space for education leaders to address the most challenging problems. I look forward to introducing today's
Definitely has a
speakers,
chocolatey
3
bend to
public
it.
school district
I'm not
leaders
sure
who
about
are
the
here in
bananas. I'm not
part
sure about it.
as a result of relationships
I'm just
we've
gonna drink the whole
developed
thing and then I will
through
make a
But first,
decision.
a little housekeeping.
Oh.
Today's episode is being recorded and will be available to view on the Harvard Education YouTube channel and Facebook page.
Thank you for that.
You can also
We appreciate that.
hgse.me/future for recordings and information on future episodes. Please submit your questions throughout today's webinar using the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom screen. You will also find, or at some point, we're going to get the closed caption access figured out as well.
What
Now,
ableist?
I'm
Didn't have closed
delighted to
caption.
welcome our guests.
Ableist.
Brenda Caselius is the superintendent of the Boston Public Schools, responsible for educating 54,000 students right here in the city I now live. She has been an educator for more than 3 decades, including former commissioner of education in Minnesota. She's also held key leadership roles in Minneapolis Public Schools and in Memphis. She has devoted her career to ensuring all children receive an equitable, exceptional, and joyful education.
Joyful education. I wonder if students in schools would classify their
school district serving 11,000
education as
Ferguson,
joyful.
Missouri. He's done it all, served as bus driver, teacher, assistant principal, deputy chief, and superintendent. A true equity warrior, he was drawn to Ferguson following the death of Michael Brown and has expanded opportunities and access for all students from preschool through graduation. And I must add, he is an HGSE grad. Hey, Dennis Jackson.
Why was he driving a school bus as a Hugsy grad?
Chicago Public Schools, the 3rd largest school district in the country with an enrollment of over 350,000 students. It's also the place I consider home. She attended CPS as a student and served as a teacher, principal, network chief education officer there prior to her current role. As CEO, she is focused on improving equity and access to high quality education in all CPS schools.
So as CEO, she considers her main job to improve equity and access in education. Just think about that for a second. And I'm still a little bit perturbed that the Chicago Public Schools have a CEO rather than a Why do they have a CEO? That's like a private business thing. Do the Chicago Public Schools consider themselves to be a private business? Who is she accountable to as the CEO? How is that different than the superintendent? I have so many questions about this. Maybe we'll be illuminated in our webinar.
I do want to acknowledge that.
Check this out. Stephanie, Chicago Public Schools has a 63% graduation rate. Equity. Thank you for that fun fact, Stephanie. Highly relevant.
Carranza, Chancellor of New York City, was originally scheduled to join us, but can no longer make it. We wish the Chancellor the very best as they reopen schools this week. So please
hi to John over on Rockfin. Appreciate your support over there.
Very special guest. Hello, everyone. It's good to see you. All right, we're getting this launch right in. I want to set us up with a little bit of framing first. First and foremost, I want to thank each of you for taking time out of your extraordinarily busy schedules to speak with us today. I know you are each feeling the weight of your responsibility right now. Boston started their school year virtually just this week, and Chicago and Ferguson, Florissant started just a few weeks ago. You have been working tirelessly to lead your communities through this crisis while simultaneously exploring opportunities to make positive change. The pandemic, we all know, has laid bare the racial inequities we face in school systems.
We all warned you, Spirit Matter. We warned
none of that is
you.
news to us. Inequities
You
that
did
are
it to
now
yourself.
being exacerbated by the crisis, resulting in dire consequences, especially for many students and families of color. The racial justice movement to ensure that Black Lives Matter is demanding change in all of our major institutions, including K-12 public schooling. While it is hard to look ahead.
I just want to note, so do you guys remember on my main channel, like a week or so ago, we looked at, so Parents Defending Ed has done an amazing job of actually procuring the Black Lives Matter curriculum from the Chicago public schools. Maybe not Chicago, it was like Skokie and another public school within the Chicago area. But so we actually have access to the entirety of the Black Lives Matter curriculum. I'm going to be working, one of my projects over the weekend is I'm starting to dissect that. I've actually connected with the guy at Parents Defending Ed who got a hold of those documents, and he's offered to help and provide anything he can. He has everything downloaded, but these documents are crazy. We actually have the Black Lives Matter curriculum materials, the teacher materials, the ones that they actually give teachers to teach them how to teach it and what to teach, and their PowerPoint presentations from preschool all the way up through high school. We've got it all. And so one of the things that I'm going to be working on is really breaking some of this stuff down. I'm planning on doing some stuff in my Substack about it. So that is coming up. And the reason I bring that up is she's talking about how Black Lives Matter. Well, Black Lives Matter just lost $60 million. But one of the things that Black Lives Matter did with all of their donations that everyone gave them during and after the summer of 2020 is they went and developed curriculum that they were trying to push into schools all over the place. And so we now, a year and a half after this webinar, have a really good idea of what they're doing. And that's something that I'm going to be breaking down on my Substack and writing a lot more about, because it is terrifying. They were literally training 4 and 5-year-olds on activism vocabulary. That's the vocab they were teaching them in preschool and kindergarten. But that's a different topic for a different day. Let's keep going.
And when we are embroiled in the current crisis, we must do so if we are to have any chance at realizing the hopes and dreams of this generation of young people and the generations that follow. Today, we're going to talk, some real talk, I hope, about what it means to lead for racial equity, both now and in the future. And I want to dig right in. I know each of you, and I know that as long as I've known you, you have had an explicit focus on racial equity. Why is that important? Perhaps especially now and in the future. Anybody want to?
I just want to remind everyone, and especially people who might be new. So this person at the Harvard Graduate School of Education just asked people that are running K-12 schools if they have an explicit focus on racial equity. Now, we've heard a lot in the last year about how critical race theory isn't taught in K-12 schools. This is what they say every single time. It's not taught in K-12 schools. Well, you can't have critical race theory without equity, and you can't have equity without critical race theory. Where one exists, the other inevitably exists. So the fact that this was even a webinar that was given in the first place tells us that critical race theory is in the public schools in Chicago, it's in the public schools in Boston, and it's in the public schools in Missouri. There's like, we literally don't need any more information about this. It is in all 3 places. And each one of these people has said that their specific job is focused on equity in the schools. As a reminder, equity is equality of outcomes. It is a fundamentalist Marxist ideology. What we appreciate is equality, giving everyone, regardless of their skin color or gender or any of those other things, access to the same opportunities, and then they have to show up and work hard and, be consistent and do all the things that normal people need to do to succeed in the world. These people do not believe in that. Not a single one of them believes in that. They want everyone to have the same outcome. That is what equity is. Yes, I hear that everyone is outraged by the lack of land blessing. The land blessing has gone out of style in recent years, but we have had a couple of presentations in the past that did like a mid-presentation land blessing. So don't hold out hope yet. Just because we haven't had a land blessing yet doesn't mean it ain't coming.
Kick us off.
Who's the oldest on the panel?
Aegis.
Well, let's go with the baby. You go, Janice.
All right, Janice, go for it.
I'm getting called out. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Well, as you stated, equity has always been at the fore in my mind as I think about this work, whether that be, from my beginning stages as a classroom teacher. One of the reasons I was interested in leadership was because of the inequities that I witnessed as a teacher early on. And when I compared that to my prior experience in the same school system, it just made me wonder about how decisions are made that give opportunities to certain students and do not provide those opportunities to others. I was blessed to
That's
have
not what
those
equity is.
opportunities and have made it my life's work to make sure that other students get those same opportunities, because I really think it's a matter of the right school, the people the experiences that you have that make all the difference. And unfortunately, for far too many of our students, that is not the case. What I've done in this role that I've been pretty proud of is not only naming equity as a focus explicitly, because although it's always been a part of the work that we've done here in CPS, I know you know that, Jan, from your.
So I want to say, Randall, I know I introduced a lot of you guys to Deb Fillman. We no longer mention that name on this channel. Deb Fillman is persona non grata. She can go fuck herself. And I would appreciate it if her name wasn't brought up. This is not one of your issues. This is a me issue. That she is an untrustworthy person that stabbed me in the back, and I don't want to hear her name anymore. That's all.
Time here, it wasn't called out explicitly. Now it's called out in our mission and vision for the district.
I'm petty.
Called out in
I'm
our
petty as
strategic
shit
plan, where
when I get stabbed in the back by people I've helped.
Goals, but we identify specific goals towards equity, so that we're not just trying to make sure all tides rise and mask the disparities that we know exist underneath that. And so I think that's important. I also have been proud of the equity office that we've created, situated that office as a senior level position reporting directly to me, which I think is critically important, and also giving them a budget and authority to make decisions on behalf of the district, so that
Deb
there's some real teeth in this notion around equity.
She did just say that in the Chicago Public Schools, there's an entire equity office. I wonder, so a nice experiment might be, see, my locals members, they know what's up. They know what's up with that whole situation. That's a different story for a different day. There are videos in my locals if you want to avail yourselves. But what I want to talk about is the fact that the Chicago Public Schools have an entire equity office. Now, I wonder, and this might be an interesting experiment, if someone wants to do this, and if you don't, I'll do it. But I wonder if the Chicago Public Schools have a website for their equity office, and I wonder what's on that website, because a lot of times they're doing this stuff in the open. So if anyone, just if you're bored or something during this stream, if you want to go take a gander over to the equity office on the Chicago Public Schools website, that might have some interesting things. I'm not going to do it right this second, but I'm definitely adding it to the mental list of 87,000 things I need to do in my head. But I think that would be an interesting thing to explore. Sam says, so this presenter has an equity office that reports to her, but she doesn't know the difference between equity and equality. So what you find a lot of times in these trainings is that the woke don't even know their own vocabulary, or they use it correctly in some instances and not in other instances. So let's just pay attention throughout the course of this webinar to see if any of these panelists change the definition of equity that they're using, because it is entirely possible that they will use one definition in some sentences and another definition in other sentences, and it just depends. It just depends. Oh no, shit. I just dropped my yarn. I got to focus on the yarn issue. But that is something that I'm going to be listening for.
Said, I've learned a lot about this work. I've learned that it feels like you can try, your hardest, and we're only getting so far. And when we have setbacks, and setback isn't even the right word, when we have incidents like what happened yesterday with Breonna Taylor, it just makes it feel even more discouraging. But after reflecting on that and absorbing that pain, it only reinforces me as well as my teachers and principals and all the other educators working on behalf of children in CPS to do more, to remove the barriers, to remove the policies and all the things that we know that get in the way from bringing about the kind of equality that we.
For those of you who missed the Deb issue, you want to go go into my locals. You can sign up for a free account. This doesn't have to be a paid thing. It is totally free. It's not behind a paywall, no matter what Deb says. You can go to my locals and look for, and do a search for a video with thieving interlopers in the title. And that will update you on the entire situation. It's in locals right now, so you can get the update on that.
We think is necessary. So it's important because there's a moral imperative. And I'm just happy to be in this position and able to make some change.
Thank you, Janice. Joe, do you want to dive in?
Sure, I can. I think that, yeah, make sure you can hear me well. I had these technical issues. I apologize.
We can hear you great. Yeah.
And so I just
Equity
want
of
to quickly
technology.
just tag on to what Janice has mentioned already.
Why is he
that
bent over a
we
desk?
have a moral imperative in front of us because, we've seen the issues with race across our country already, especially with the brutality of Black men.
Yes,
period.
thieving interlopers.
And I think that, what the pandemic has done,
equity.cps.edu.
COVID pandemic
Thank you.
is shown us
Spirit
these
Matter.
deep-seated inequities in our communities. COVID has shown us the inequities when it comes to healthcare. But now with the impact it's had on public schools, we also see the deep inequities in education. We know the data. The data is pretty clear.
Hang on, pause. I just want to show you guys real quick. We're going to come back to the presentation, but I want to show you guys this equity website that Spirit Matter just found for us on the Chicago Public Schools. Look at this. Look at this. There is a whole website with their equity frame. Oh, there's the CEO. I still don't know why she's a CEO. They've got an equity framework. They've got policy. Oh, they've got pronouns. He, him is L. I've never seen a foreign language pronoun before, but I guess there we go. They've got, this is going to be a good thing to dig through. Look at all this stuff. Tools. Stuff in Spanish, of course. Policy, groups, events. This is a fun activity for later. But let's get back to the presentation for right now. Thank you, Spirit Matter, for looking that up for us. That'll be a treasure trove of documents. And listen, man, so I'm going to be launching the Unwoke Army. There's going to be an application process. It's going to go up probably tomorrow, to be honest. And it's going to launch for my local supporters first, but anyone can apply. It's just I'm going to be bringing my local supporters in first because they have skin in the game. They've been supporting me. It won't be like that forever. I just need a small group to start out with. Maybe one of the things that we can do in the Unwoke Army is create an entire database of these equity websites and break them down and look at what different school districts are doing. This is something that anyone can do, because one of the things I want to do with the Unwoke Army is I want to really create just a grassroots team of people, like a Bad News Bears style thing that is going to help get parents the information that they need. And so I think it'd be a great idea to create an entire database of all these public school equity websites, because they all have them. And that way we're also going to be able to track when they change their language. So much potential here, but that's going to be coming this weekend. It's going to be up, and I've been holding back on launching it because reasons, but I have been pushed by my locals. Again, I have to thank all my local supporters for this. You guys have been my support system for a minute, and they have pushed me to a place where, like, Carlin, you need to launch this thing because we're really excited to join it. So we'll be coming. I finalized everything last night. I just didn't want to launch it on a Friday when I also had a webinar going, but it will be coming and it will be available. And then we're going to get started and we're going to do the work of exposing all these idiots.
About what our students are not getting, and especially Black and brown children, particularly Black males in this country. And what
this guy thinks men matter. Oh, isn't that funny?
Super clear about what we're after when we talk about equity. It can't just be a buzzword. It's got to be the work. And my wife and I are raising a Black son, and I have to have these conversations with him about how he should operate at 15 years old, because I want to see him when he comes home from school. But more importantly, I want to make sure that he's getting the kind of education that's going to prepare him for life. And that hasn't been happening for Black children across this country, if not across this globe. Having worked in CPS and lived in Boston, it's prevalent all over, and especially here in Ferguson. And when I talk about the inequities, it's not enough to get a high school diploma. You have to have the skills to be able to speak well and to think well and to navigate the world. And I know we'll get into some of this, but that is why it's so important now more than ever before.
Thank you, Joe. Brenda, why do you lead for racial equity? Why are you explicit?
Oh, well, first of all, Janice and Joe did such a great job. I'm so honored to be on this panel, and thank you, Jen, for convening it with Harvard and PELP. It's the best professional development I've ever gotten. It is the PELP professional development I've had all the times that I've been there. And so one of the reason that I lead with it is because it's who I am. And after 3 days, 3 decades of doing this work, I'm just tired. Quite honestly. And, there's an urgency in now. And,
I saw someone tweet, I think it was Paul Rossi. He once tweeted that equity, this diversity and equity stuff is literally the only job someone can get that the only thing they have to do is go do a presentation that says, I'm just so tired of doing this work. They get paid thousands of dollars to do presentations, and then they go into these organizations saying, I'm just so tired of doing the work. Why don't you all do the work? Why don't you just listen to me? I don't have to provide facts or evidence or data or any of these things. I just have to show up and say, I'm tired of doing this work. That's all they have to do to make thousands and thousands of dollars. They don't have to provide data that these problems even exist in the first place. They don't have to provide data that their solutions are effective in solving these problems. They don't have to do shit. They just show up and cry. Bruce, thank you so much for the super chat. How do we find like-minded parents in our county to pool and share resources? Bruce, that is exactly what I'm working on with the Unwoke Army. Now, I don't have a system yet to be able to identify people by county, but what I would recommend you do is, first off, make sure you're going to your school board meetings. Because at school board meetings, you're going to be able to connect with other parents who are concerned about what's going on in the schools. Maybe you only connect with one parent. That's okay. Because then the two of you can work together to connect with more parents. I would also say join local groups that have people fighting back. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Moms for Liberty in the world, but the fact is they have local chapters all over the place. So maybe you join your local Moms for Liberty group. And yes, men can join Moms for Liberty, and that at least gets you some connections about people who are fighting back. Now, the reason I don't like Moms for Liberty is mostly because I really don't like the book banning shit. I really do not like it. I'm not talking about overt pornography, but in terms of just connecting with like-minded people, it can be a really great resource for that. So I think those are some ways I would get started. And this is something I'm trying to work out with the Unwoke Army once we're able to scale. Now, I'm going to start with it small because I need to be able to learn to be able to scale it effectively, because if you go right off the bat, it just screws everything up. And I've learned that over years of trying to do this stuff. But eventually, I do want to have like a place where people all over the country can come to connect with other people near them. So that is on the list. But for right now, I would say go to school board meetings. I would say connect with any local groups. And I would say even just go door to door in your community. And don't talk about politics. I don't know what side of the aisle you're on. And frankly, it doesn't really matter because both sides of the aisle should be concerned about this. But just go take school assignments that you might be worried about and be like, are you okay with this? Are you okay with them learning this in schools? I know that can be intimidating, but that might be honestly the best way to do it. Just create local parents groups. And if anyone has any advice for Bruce in the chat, please feel free to chat it in.
When George Floyd, and we watched for 8 minutes, 42 seconds, that horrible murder happened in front, that now gave us new wind under our wings to, in this moment, to do something and to do it well, because children don't have a voice and they don't have a rewind. They don't get to do it over again. We got to stop waiting and putting it to the next generation. And, someone's got to stand up and be courageous. And so, I want to be that someone. I've always been that someone, and I've fallen short because our Black kids still are not achieving at the levels that they need to be achieving. And we need to continue to rally everybody. One of the reasons I'm here in Boston is because, I thought coming with mayoral control will help to drive the agenda forward, because you can rely on all of the weight of city government to move the agenda forward and to move it faster without the barriers that could be there with a different type of structure, and having the commissioner experience and having all this sub-cabinet work with under Mark Dayton, and all of the, kind of coordinated all hands on deck work that's needed to really get at the success, because schools can't do it alone. And Black kids aren't going to get what they need, if we don't stand in the gap for them, if we don't put together the connections for their families. Children don't come.
Notice that she is only focusing on Black children when it comes to equity. That's a reflection of the fact that they believe that Black people are the most oppressed people. So they usually don't like Asians get the shaft in this. Latino people get the shaft in this. Native Americans get the shaft in this. Everyone, they only talk about Black and white, and they literally do not see any other group as being as marginalized as Black people. So they just tend to ignore them entirely.
As just a child, their whole family comes to us. Yeah. This isn't just a children's issue. This is a family and community issue.
Boston probably has a higher Asian population than they have Black. I don't know that for sure, but
adults,
I would
allow
guess
this to happen generation after generation after generation for poor children,
especially with Harvard,
especially poor children of color
and MIT,
and poor Black children. So no matter how you cut the data, poor Black children are on the bottom every single time, and our Native kids as well.
Yeah. Oh, there it is, non-Black person.
Where you have,
and those other kids.
Nations. And so I think it's important for us to continue to lift this up, to be explicit, to be bold about it, and to continue to talk.
Jennifer's in total white savior mode right now.
Action. And this is what I love about Dr. Ibram's book, where he talks about policy, right? Yeah. You have to get at it at the policy.
As a reminder, Ibram Kendi, author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, has an anti-racism, a $20 million anti-racism center in Boston at Boston University, which is my alma mater. And Boston University will not get another dime in donations from me as long as Ibram X. Kendi is a faculty, not only a faculty member, but they're investing tens of millions of dollars in Ibram X. Kendi. It really, really burns me on a level that I cannot even describe, because I loved my time at Boston University. I loved it. Boston is the best city in the world, and I got to go to an amazing school there. And now they're investing all this money in literal racism. Really burns me.
Sea level.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm pretty on fire about it.
Yeah. The one thing I wanted to
go ahead, Janice.
No, just to build on that, I know we have to keep it moving. I think one thing that is important to note, especially as an African-American woman, every time I get a set of data, to Brenda's point, Black students are not meeting the standards at the same level as their peers. But I think what we also have to be aware of too is the just repeated disinvestment. They're also at the bottom when you look at resource allocation. They're at the bottom when you look at opportunities for advancement. Their parents, so if you talk about the larger ecosystem, have been locked out and not educated.
Notice they're not providing any data
systems. And so what I think
now,
I'm unapologetic.
I'm not necessarily denying that these claims are true. But what I am pointing out is that they have provided zero data and zero empirical evidence to support their claims. They may be true, they may not be true. But the part of this ideology that is frankly infuriating is that they don't feel it necessary to provide data. They don't look at data. They only look at lived experiences. Now, I'm a qualitative researcher, so I think that lived experiences actually do matter. But what I also know is that data that you give from lived experiences should be backed up by quantitative data. In fact, studying lived experiences of people lays the base work for quantitative research. So, I don't have any problem with looking at that data, but the fact is that they have not presented any evidence for the claims that they are making. And even more importantly than that, they don't feel any need to. That's the most disturbing thing of all. They don't feel the need to present any quantifiable data to back up what they're saying.
About that, I know that we have that luxury here in the city that is, very liberal.
Exactly. Patrice says,
my heart goes out to
sorry to keep pausing it, but I have things to say. I have feelings, and it's my stream, and I'll do what I want. Patrice says, I bet they never get to any action items in this presentation either. They never have solutions, just broad instructions to do the work. Patrice, that is exactly right, and that's an amazing observation. We watch these presentations every single week. That's why I don't have any hair. But They never get to actionable solutions. They literally always just say, do the work, do the work, do the work, as though people can intuit what that means.
Some of my superintendent colleagues who are in places where even the mention of any kind of equity work, is met with a rebuke. But even in this position, I have to make decisions where it is the right decision in advancement of equity and action, as Joe talked about. And sometimes it's hard because these are institutions and things that have been in place and it's always been done this way. And so for leaders across the board, making those decisions are tough. But I believe leaders of color are really in a position where we have to do it, because if we don't do it, it's not going to happen.
That's right. You're in the seats, right?
Yeah.
When we're in the seats, we have to move the ball forward. And
Yep.
Before we move into even more depth, I just want to stick a pin in something. And I remember reading this book years ago called Tempered Radicals. I don't know if that rings a bell with any of you. I think it was actually brought up by Monica Higgins at Pell. And the book was about people who choose to work inside of these systems, but are fighting for a radically different future for children. So what I see and hear.
Tempered radicals, is that what she says? What radically different future for children are they fighting for? Tempered radicals. I'm gonna look that up. What radically different future for children are they fighting for? That's the question we should be asking. Because, oh, Sam, what a great point. Do the work equals bend the knee. That is exactly correct, Sam. That is exactly correct. Thank you for the super chat. But, like in every one of these presentations, it always fundamentally comes back to they want to destabilize the system. So we have to listen for keywords like this that tells us that exact information, that what they really want to do is change the entire system. So if she's talking, this woman who is like, Jennifer is totally being like white savior, like the nodding. It's like, this is totally like a white savior complex nod. I don't know what about it is. It's like, I don't know if they feel like they're identifying with Black people when they nod like that, but it's a little bit racist if I'm honest. But when she said that they want a revolutionary system, well, what does that mean? What don't they like about the current system? What vision do they have? Those are the questions we need to be asking. Oh, shoot. Hang on. There it is.
And the three of you are people who love what's possible in school districts, right? The possibilities, the possible future, and are incredibly dissatisfied by the same systems that you lead, right? So it's, we need the people who are pushing from the outside, but we also need racial equity leaders who are pushing and changing from the inside as well. So it's just powerful to hear from the three of you. Let's dig a little deeper though. And I think each of you started to touch on this to some extent. We know that school district strategy should, in theory, be tied to a robust vision of excellent instruction.
In
right?
theory.
Teaching and learning in the
theory,
classroom.
yes.
And Janice, I'm going to start with you again. Tell us, what is your vision, right, for equitable instruction, and what might that mean for the work that schools and districts take on? And it may be informed by what you've learned during the crisis as well. So what's
Metastep, thank you for the super chat. Yes, silence is violence, but shut up and listen. That is exactly correct. Shut up and listen is something they say to white people all the time. And then they say silence is violence. And then if they don't, and then if you speak up and they don't like the words you're saying, they say words are violence. It's all about power. It is about nothing more than power.
Yeah.
What are we after here?
A couple of things. I think number one, and I want to try not to go too far off on a tangent, but one of the things that kind of drives me crazy is as we think about the impact of COVID on schooling, which the impact is going to be tremendous. And we can't even really articulate that now because it's still in that unknown phase, but we know that it's not going in the right direction.
So side note, Randy Weingarten came out and said, I think it was like 2 days ago, that they were, Randy Weingarten is the head of the teachers unions. She came out and said that they were aware that masks were leading to learning loss. And they continued to push the masks anyway for 2 years. And you know what? There was this video going around Twitter yesterday about this classroom, I think in like Nevada, of these kids who the teacher announced they weren't going to have to wear masks anymore. And the kids were cheering and celebrating. They were so happy. And I watched that video thinking, they're not wearing the masks anymore because the left decided that they would lose an election if those kids weren't wearing masks anymore. The left has completely controlled this issue from start to finish, and I'm sorry, it is the weakness of the political right that allows them to every single time. And I'm not talking to anyone specifically in the chat. I'm not targeting anyone in the chat. You guys are great. You're here. You're doing the work. But watching that video of these children cheering that they finally got to take their masks off after 2 years, when the teachers' unions knew that those masks were contributing to learning loss. They knew it, and they forced those kids to wear them anyway. It is one of the most offensive things I've ever seen in my life, because those masks came off the minute that the Democrats knew that the polling data said that they were going to lose an election in November if they kept this bullshit up. And that was the minute that everything changes. Schools all over the country right now are dropping these mask mandates and making masks optional. Do you guys think that that was just coincidence? Do you think it was just coincidence that all of a sudden states and schools all over the country just at the same time made masks optional? No, it was not a coincidence. It was because the Democrats got their poll numbers in and they realized they were going to lose an election if they didn't do it. And that is the only reason that we are seeing mask mandates fall. That is the only reason. It is not because of any activism on the right. And I hated to say that because so many people in the chat and watching right now probably did do activism, and you showed up at your school board meetings and you protested and you sent strongly worded letters. You did all the right things, and it didn't work because that is the amount of control that the left has over all of our institutions. That the mandates only went not when they realized that it was contributing to learning loss from the students, but when they realized that they were going to have political consequences for it. I don't know. I just had to get that rant out of my system.
With that said, when I hear people talk about, it's time to do something radically different in schools, and I agree with that, but I don't think when they say it, we are hearing the same thing. So when I think of what we need to do radically different, we need to look at these policies. We need to stop doing things that are extraneous, that don't advance student learning for anybody, white, Black, Latino, etc. I think that's number one. I also think that what works in schooling across the board works for poor Black children. Yeah. They need access to a high quality curriculum. They need access to qualified teachers. They need an educational experience that is immersed in literacy and that is rich and where they have to read and write and create authentic thoughts that come from them. And I feel like far too often we experiment with low-income students and Black children in particular because we don't know what to do. But when you see the schools that are making a difference, these are the schools that believe in those tenets of an effective school. And one of those tenets is around high quality instruction. So how we have tried to address this in CPS is through two things I'll talk about. Of course, there are a lot of things, but two that stand out. One is creating academic programs in our school. Chicago Public Schools is a school choice district. All students have a neighborhood school that they are zoned to, but we also have a variety of selective enrollment, magnet, IB programs, etc.
That's not school choice.
Notice in those schools,
that's not real school choice.
Selection criteria, which definitely gives those schools an advantage. All of them have a strong academic program and curriculum. There is clarity around what students will know and be able to do at each point in time in their high school and elementary experience. What we're trying to do now is introduce those programs, and we've done that in the past few years, into neighborhood schools. And it can't just be the program in name only. We can't just change the, moniker or the nomenclature outside. We have to change it with resources, with the qualified teachers. We have to train the teachers to deliver that curriculum. And so we have expanded STEM, IB, world language programs, arts programming across the board in many of our schools. And what we've done in that process is, as opposed to the district coming up with ideas for schools, we engage the community. So schools have to basically say, this is a program that we want in our school. And that kind of engagement gives them agency, but it also leads to a higher likelihood that the program is going to be successful. The second thing that we are currently working on, and this is an ambitious project, is to create a fully aligned curriculum from from kindergarten through 12th grade in all of the core areas in Chicago. And it is going to be online. It's going to be front facing to our students. And us being thrusted into COVID has actually accelerated that project in some ways, because we were going to be spending a year on teacher training. Our teachers were thrown into the deep on, using technology. And so we're just trying to take some of those lessons that came out of that are coming out of this remote environment and pulling that over. But with that said, by the summer of 2023, we intend to have a fully aligned curriculum so that algebra doesn't look different on this part of town as opposed to this part of town. That's the current case. And even if it means that you have to do more scaffolding and provide more support and more enrichment in order for students to be at the same level, every teacher should know without equivocation what students should be doing at any particular grade level. I feel like—
Now, I don't actually have a problem with what she just said. I don't have a problem with it at all. Where I have a question is, what is going into that curriculum? What's going into that curriculum that is going to be standardized across all Chicago public schools? And does it have anything to do with that equity website that we just looked at? She said that this was all going to be online. Okay, so then we should be able to go onto the Chicago schools website and find their standardized curriculum and find out what exactly is in it, because there is a difference between algebra and anti-racist math. And if you want to know what that difference is, we watched the anti-racist math teacher training webinar last week for happy hour. It's still live on all my channels, actually. Except for it shouldn't be on Rumble, but it is on Actively Unwoke. It is on Odyssey. It is on Rockfin. So if you want to know the difference between algebra and anti-racist math, we literally watched the webinar last week. But that is the question I have. It's not about standardization across the different schools, which, that makes sense. I don't have an issue with that. But what are they standardizing? What are the elements of that curriculum? What elements are being infused to it? Sam says, every is taught differentiated instruction, which means lessons are tailored to the learning types in each class. Zero experimentation on Black students. Yeah, I mean, they're absolutely lying when they say like they're experimenting on Black students. That is not the truth. Sam is absolutely correct on that. Thank you for the super chat, Sam. Yeah, anti-racist math is scary for all of us, especially me.
That's one of the biggest equity issues. And in our equity work, the district takes ownership for the resource allocation and the policy work. Like, we make those decisions every single day. Yeah. But what we're pushing our teachers on is that you make a decision every single day about what kids do in the classroom. Yeah. And when you give them easy work or no work or the same work they did the year before, you are contributing to the inequities that we're all so-called fighting against. So equity is embedded in all of our work, and everybody in this organization has a role in advancing it.
I love that, Janice. Does anybody want to build on it?
Yeah, I'll dive in quickly. I'll say that, my vision is, similar to Janice's. You want, broad programs. I'm a math teacher by training, and I can tell you that, having taught math for years, that there's a deep inequity when it comes to elementary mathematics. And so we've turned our focus in Ferguson to making sure that we have good, deep, quality curriculum, teachers who are well prepared. And what we found in elementary schools is that teachers sometimes lack the content knowledge in order to be able to teach the standards like they ought to be taught in ways that kids really get the deep learning.
Why do teachers lack the content knowledge? Why do teachers lack the content knowledge in the subjects that they're teaching? And I think we can intuit that we're not just talking about first-year teachers here. We're talking about teachers who have taught the subject matter over and over and over again. Now, one of the best ways to learn a subject matter is to teach it. And so if you are teaching a subject matter over and over and over again, and you still don't understand that subject matter, that's a problem. That's a problem. But the reason that they lack the content knowledge is that teachers are no longer evaluated on the content knowledge of the subjects that they're teaching. That's why. So any teachers in the chat that can correct me on this, but I believe that's why. Teachers are no longer evaluated on the subject matter knowledge of the subjects that they're teaching. So that's why they lack the content knowledge. But even if you could use that excuse for like a first-year teacher in math or history or English, I'm sorry, by the time they get to the second year, they have no excuse. They've already taught it for a full year. Why do you still lack the content knowledge? What the heck are you doing in teacher training that means you lack the content knowledge? You know what they're doing? Equity, anti-racism, critical race theory. That's why. Yeah, Edward says they're college graduates and can't teach elementary school math. Exactly. And you wonder why students in schools have like a 30% grade level reading rate on the National School Report Card? Because teachers aren't learning the subject matter anymore. They're learning equity and diversity and critical race theory and anti-racism and all this other stuff, and they're not learning actually the basics that they're teaching to kids.
And I say mathematics because I believe strongly in STEM and STEAM careers. And in order to get students prepared for those careers, which includes being a physician or a scientist or whatever the case, math is the foundation of that. And when our babies leave, and whether they're a white baby or a black baby, I'm not going to hold anybody's child back. I want all of them to get it. But we know black kids haven't been getting it, and our black boys in particular. And so elementary
How did you become a math teacher?
This is a clarion call to the world that we have got to teach our children. I know reading is important, and I stand with that. I love to write.
Oh, yeah, we can teach reading too. Okay, here's my question. How did you become a math teacher? How did this guy become a math teacher if black children are not learning math or not being given the opportunity to learn math? Is it about them not being given the opportunity to learn it, or is it something else that's going on in the classroom that's causing them to fail at disproportionately higher rates? That would be the question I would ask, because clearly this guy learned math. He apparently went to the Harvard Graduate School of Education, which, means he's a little bit privileged. So how did he become a math teacher and a successful superintendent in Ferguson, which they might have us believe is one of the most racist places in the country? How did that happen when he's black?
But mathematics has to be at the foundation of that in classrooms. And so what we've turned our attention to in Ferguson is making sure that when kids leave second grade, by the time they get to third grade, they ought to have the skill sets. And let me tell you why we say that. Just like I do, that when students get to sixth grade, having taught middle school and high school math, sixth grade is the bottleneck year. If you're not in pre-algebra in sixth grade, then you get tracked in a path that doesn't get you to the AP classes by the time you graduate from high school. Do you wonder why the kids in Japan do better than the kids in America?
Because their parents make them.
There's something different about the kids in Japan's brains or the kids in America. It's the access to the kind of experience.
No, it's their parents. The kids in Japan do better than the kids in America because their parents force them to sit their asses at the table and to learn math. Asian parents, whether they're Japanese or Chinese or Korean or any other variety of Asian parents force their children to actually learn the content. They hold their children to higher standards. That is why Japanese children are better at math. It's because of their parents. It's not because of anything else. It's because of their parents and their culture. It is demanded in their culture. We have stopped demanding excellence. And do you know why we've stopped demanding excellence? Because societies built on equity do not allow for excellence to exist. It doesn't allow for excellence to exist. That is the entire purpose of equity in the first place. So if you want to change the fact that students are not being forced to learn how to do math, you need to start changing the culture. And if your standard for the culture is that everyone ends up in the same place and there are no disparities at all, then you haven't actually done anything, because you have created a culture where you do not allow excellence to exist.
That gives them the skills they need. Kids graduate from schools in Japan with AP calculus. Our standard in America is algebra 1. Our babies will never get to those kinds of careers if we don't make mathematics a strong focus in our elementary schools. And so,
I mean, I'll say this too, though. Like, I graduated from high school doing calculus at like a pretty decent level, and like I haven't used math since. So, like, they're focusing on STEM careers, which apparently he believes in STEM careers. I don't know what it means to believe in a career path, but you can do just fine if you don't go into a STEM career. You can do just fine in careers that don't require math at all. One of the reasons I went to Boston University is they required 0 math upon entering the university.
for me, the vision is really clear. Let's make sure mathematics, because when kids get, math strongly early, the confidence goes off the chart. Most people who say, I'll end with this, most people who say they aren't good mathematicians or didn't do good at math in school, it's not because you couldn't, especially girls. It's because you didn't have a great teacher who understood the content.
On that, I
agree. So I
agree.
think you have to have that.
I agree with him on that.
To provide students, by the time they get to 6th grade, access to those opportunities.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say math. I picked science. I used to always say, if children in elementary school could get regular science every day, it's the hypothesis making, it's the experimenting, it's the inquiry based, it's the project based, it's the failing at the science, learning how to fail and move forward. But, of course, math is such a big part of science as well. But, I think that science is just so important now to everything in the future, and important to what.
I have a question. Why are the woke pushing everything into science now? I mean, I'm not poo-pooing science. Science is fine. But it strikes me as a little bit odd, this push, especially coming from a political side that is so kind of like accepting of everyone regardless of like whatever. Why are they pushing people into math and science? What is the underpinning behind pushing people into math and science? I don't know the answer to that. I'm honestly posing the question because I've heard this come up in several different teacher webinars where they're like overtly focused on pushing people into math and science, when it's not like you have to go into the math or sciences in order to have a fruitful career. You don't. Like, if they wanted a lot of their students to have fruitful careers, they would teach them trades. They would teach them things like welding or plumbing or things that you can do, or electrician. You can do very well in any of those careers. Like, college is not for everyone, and I don't think a career in math and science is fundamentally better or worse than a career in the trades. A lot of kids are much more inclined to the trades. So why do they keep pushing everyone towards math and science? That's the question I have. Well, Spirit Matter says because we are doomed to fail at science, they're pushing society into collapse. Maybe. What happens when we have an entire generation of scientists who were taught anti-racist math and taught that there is no correct answer in math and that their teachers are not allowed to correct them, and then all of a sudden they're building buildings and bridges because they became engineers in engineering schools where they weren't actually required to know math? Is it to accelerate the destruction of society? Is it to accelerate the destabilization of the system? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
What children are going to need to know in the future in terms of their next jobs. And
Oh, Sam, hang on. Sam has a great point. You can't indoctrinate students through trades, only through corrupted disciplines. That's probably not far off, Sam. Yeah, maybe.
Really what we're preparing them for and what that's going to look like in the future.
Yeah.
People would be pretty surprised to find out, and I was shocked coming from Minnesota to Massachusetts, that in our school district, high schools can pick their own graduation requirements. And so there's no standard across all of our high schools, 36 high schools, on what is a diploma.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the first policies we need to pass here. We were a little sidetracked because of the pandemic, but we have to get clear coherence about what our North Star is. What are we shooting from to know what excellent is and what a diploma means, and move backwards from there on what you want to put in place. And I wanted to speak to a couple of things that I didn't hear explicitly from my colleagues, but I know that they also very much support, and that is the students who are speaking, are still learning English, right? And so how do we support our EL learners and our immigrant students through dual language programs, immersion programs, or through programs with ethnic studies so that they see themselves in their work? Or how do we think about our curriculum and who teaches our kids, and the diversity of our teacher pool, and the professionals who are around them, and the profound experience that they'll have when they see people who
I'm
look
hearing
like
a whole
them in
lot
the
of
books
this
that they read, and in the people who are working directly
I don't
with
even think
them.
she knows the point
Those
she's
things
making.
are how we deliver excellence. Those things are how we set an expectation for our kids, and presenting the absent narratives that have been missing from our curriculum, and really taking an anti-racist lens. I mean, it's so easy. We started, I think, the first decade of my career talking about multiculturalism, and kind of this pluralistic society. And then we got to equity, and that was different from equality, right? Which came after equality, and then equity. And now it's this active kind of voice about being anti-racist.
Oh, really? Oh, really, Superintendent of Boston Public Schools? Oh, really? Are you telling me that equality is different than equity? And equality came first. And then they evolved from equality and they got to equity. And then they went from equity to anti-racism. Huh. How fascinating, Superintendent of Boston Public Schools. She wasn't saying a lot there. But this is why we watch the whole training from start to finish, because they may be saying like word salad, and then all of a sudden they say the quiet part out loud. And it's like, we need to wait for the quiet part to be said out loud. We have to sit through a lot of boring word salad that doesn't mean a whole lot of anything for a little bit. But then we get to that point where she's like, equity is different than equality, and it's a more evolved form. And then we go from equity to anti-racism. Exactly. Thank you for illuminating that for us, Superintendent of the Boston Public Schools.
And so it's a sharpened kind of focus on this work that we have in front of us. And I think Ibrahim Kendi says it the best in his book, where he says, it's like the conveyor belt in the airport, where you're all on the same equity vision. Everybody's feeling good about going in the same direction on the conveyor belt, but it's the person who goes against the conveyor belt. It's the person who's working against the systems that are, and the structures that are the barriers that's the hard work. That's the hard work we have ahead of us.
Yeah, and I just have to lift up. I mean,
have the Boston Public Schools paid Ibrahim Kendi?
Racial equity, as I know you three are, you have to have some pretty serious instructional chops, right, in these roles. And I've got to tell you, it's really refreshing to hear you talk. And
I love it when presenters go like this when they're on a panel. They're like, "You guys are all so great. Aren't you so great? Pat yourself on the back for being so great. You've got some chops. That's why you're on my panel. Aren't you so great?" And then all the presenters go, "Yes, yes, we are great." But I have a question. Has the Boston Public Schools paid Ibrahim Kendi to do any professional development work for them? And if they have paid Ibrahim Kendi any of that, how much have they paid him? That's a good public records request if anyone wants to write that one. How much has the Boston Public have the Boston Public Schools hired Ibrahim X Kendi for any professional development work for their teaching staff? That's a question I'd like to know the answer to.
A deep way about instruction, a deep and powerful way, and acknowledge, to your point, Brenda, that your understanding of it is evolving, right? Over the years, decade to decade, you're getting a deeper and richer understanding of what anti-racist instruction looks like. That it's not enough to teach math, but you have to create an environment.
You have to teach
where students can
anti-racist
have
math.
a deep sense of belonging in order to be in the productive struggle that is required to learn math well. I mean, I so appreciate that, and that there are all kinds of implications for the way the system has to be designed to support it. But I want to ask you this question, and I think that Brenda, you tapped into it a little bit just now. Over the decades, we're getting smarter and smarter. In the last 20 years, we have been defining and measuring our success largely based on standardized assessments.
Oh, and don't get me started on that.
Well, in many ways, we were defining the problem.
You know, I never quite understood why the woke left wanted to get rid of standardized testing. Listen, I'm not saying that standardized testing is perfect, and obviously you have problems coming in because some students are just better test takers than others. But the minimum that standardized testing provides us is a baseline of where people are at across school districts, across different grade levels. And I think that that baseline is important, not in terms of like creating punitive, measures for people who are underperforming, but just in terms of like knowing that they're underperforming in the first place. And so it never quite made sense to me when like the woke left became against standardized testing, because it just seems to me like they're trying to cover their tracks, and it seems to me like they're just trying to deny that there is such thing as quantifiable data. And listen, again, I'm not a big defender of like standardized testing. I don't necessarily think it should be used in college admissions, because I think it's not an accurate indicator of like where the students are actually at. And I say this as someone who worked in college admissions for like 5 years. But there is something to be said for providing a baseline measurement. And if the standardized testing needs to be improved, then fine. But why are we getting rid of all baseline quantitative measurements? Oh, we're Tyler Dryden today. Oh, I see. I'm late. Did we do shots yet? No, we have not done shots yet. Not yet, but the day is young. Murphy's Pool always has a new name. Always has a new name every single time. We're sipping today. We're sipping bougie alcoholic beer with our pinky finger out. Guys, mount that like button if you haven't already. We have been going about an hour and 20 minutes now. If you are not subscribed to the channel that you're watching on, whether that be YouTube or Odyssey or Rockfin or even Rumble, please make sure you subscribe to the channel today. We do happy hour at 5 p.m. every Friday. And I hope you're enjoying the show. Let's keep going.
We were defining it as the achievement gap, right? And our job was to boost test scores and narrow achievement gaps. And I'm curious about how you're thinking about defining success these days. Do we need to start thinking about it differently? I mean, that's an authentic question. Does anybody want to take a shot at that? Joe, do you want to kick
it? Yeah, absolutely. I think about it often. Test scores will be around. They're not going anywhere. I want to know how well my son knows the content. And I just want to add, before I just talk about some of these sort of ways to measure success, is that teacher quality. Let's never forget, that part of that whole sort of instructional core. I said quality, not color. Teacher quality. And what that teacher thinks about the student that's in front of him or her. It determines what that child or children, what they get. So I just want to highlight that. But I think that when we think about measuring what success looks like in the future, I want them to know math well, but I think we need a meter that measures things like grit and empathy, humility. Because what I try to teach
I agree with him on the grit part. I absolutely agree with him on the grit. I think that part of the problem is that we aren't teaching people to have grit and resiliency anymore, which means we've raised an entire generation of people who don't know how to overcome problems. So do I think a measurement on grit and resiliency would be great? Yes. Yes. And there are ways to measure those things. They're not abstract. No, do I think we need a measure on empathy? No. No. That's not the correct thing. Don't tell people what to care about and what not to care about. That's going to lead to brainwashing. That's not good. But do I think we should have a measurement of how inclined people are to push forward when they're in tough situations to accomplish their goals, regardless of what obstacles might be put in their way? I think that'd be really beneficial, actually. I agree with him.
My son is how to be a good person. how to care about other
No,
people,
you
be
don't teach other
empathetic
people how to be a good
towards others
person.
who are
No,
more or less fortunate than you
no,
are, but because
sorry,
they're humans,
no.
and that's what we all share.
And the reason I say that we should not be teaching people how to be a good person is that definition is gonna vary wildly depend on who is doing the teaching. That is just another way of saying brainwashing. If you don't do the things that I want you to do, and you don't say the things I want you to say, and you don't use the right words, and you don't post the black square on your Instagram page, then you're not a good person. If you don't read this book called White Fragility or How to Be an Anti-Racist, then you're not a good person. Like, that's the problem that we get into there. Grit and resilience are measurable concepts. They are measurable concepts because when you're measuring grit and resilience, you're measuring it based on behaviors. You're not measuring it based on feelings. You're measuring it based on behaviors. Empathy is not a measurable concept because you're measuring it based on feelings. And those feelings are innately going to be self-reported. And so that's not going to work out at all. So what they're going to try to do is they're going to say, if you do these behaviors, that's what makes you a good person. But those behaviors are going to be defined by them. And they may not necessarily be the behaviors that have anything to do with being a good person. It has to do with enacting the behaviors they want you to have. Tyler Durden, Murphy's Pool. Sorry, wrong name. The cool kids get the reference. What's happening? Hot stuff. What are we drinking? Right now, Murphy's Pool, which is what I'm going to call you because that's how we met. We go back. We go way back. Right now, I am drinking a Smutty Nose chocolate banana split. Now, I am almost done, so we're going to be pouring a new beer in a minute. What are you drinking, Murphy's Pool? Guys, chat in what you're drinking if you have a fun drink for happy hour. Let's keep going.
Distance, I think, is another important one. But here's one that sometimes we sort of throw to the wayside, and I want to bring this out right now. That forgiveness is another quality, and how we measure that, I don't necessarily know yet, but I think we need some way to measure how we forgive, because in this time
why
of
are you
COVID
measuring
and
that?
so many other things going on with climate and economics and race, people have been hurt and so many different ways. And what we've got to learn is to teach our children how to have those kinds of soft skills, if you will, and learn how to forgive.
I absolutely believe that people need to get better at forgiveness, and I think that that is true of the general population. Do I want the schools or the teachers to have any involvement in measuring whether school-age children have learned forgiveness? No. No. That's not even something, I'm sorry, that's not even something the schools should be worried about. This is an adult concept. I know many adults who do not understand the concept of forgiveness. Because forgiveness isn't actually about the other person, it's about you and not holding on to that pain and anger. But the school should have nothing to do. They should have absolutely nothing to do with teaching children how to feel. They should have nothing to do with that at all. That is why I'm against social emotional learning. Fundamentally, teachers should not be practicing psychology without a license. Tyler Durden says, excuse me, working tomorrow, so just Miller Lite for me. Oh, dude, Miller, that is like the devil's beer. Why would you do that to yourself? The worst hangover I ever had in my life was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, when someone convinced me it was a good idea to drink 2 Miller High Lifes. They called it the champagne of beer. I was already drunk, and then they gave me Miller High Life on top of it, and I was like, I could not even function the next day. It was bad. I don't know why you're drinking that crap, Murphy's Pool, but we're going to work on your beer selection. It's okay. We're going to get you through this. We're going to work on that.
When you've been wrong, we often teach that when we talk about restorative practices. But teaching that charges our students to be the kinds of people that give them the skills they need to operate in this world, because this world has so many challenges. I mean, we have a great country, but I think we have gone by the wayside when it comes to some of those soft skills. And I really think that, problem solving, citizenship, and all those things are important. But
exactly,
I think
meta step.
that
Exactly.
grit and empathy
exactly.
and humility is really important. And then we can teach that to our students and during the times that they're in their formative years, as they matriculate through school and into life and meet other people, especially people who don't look like them, then having those kinds of characteristics are really important. But I think forgiveness can't be forgotten because so many of us have been wronged in so many different ways, and we carry that toxic or toxicity with us. And we've got to learn to forgive people for us and not for them, so that we can move on, because it allows you to engage and to grow in ways that you couldn't before.
He's not wrong, but the schools shouldn't be teaching it.
Joe, thank you for sharing that. Does anyone want to chime in on this idea of success? Janice?
All right, I finished my beer almost, so we got to pick out a new beer. I know which one I would like to drink. All right, I didn't almost finish my beer. I was still a couple sips away. Hang on. It's getting a little alcoholic, if I'm honest. Hang on. All right. The next beer that I would like to drink, I want to do this peanut butter stout, man. I'm a sucker for a good peanut butter stout. So we have Marsh Island Brewing, and I'm sure there's something racist about this rune that I'm going to get in trouble for, but I didn't design the beer can. We have Marsh Island Brewing, PBU Who, and it's a peanut butter milk stout with a 5.1% alcohol content, which sounds a little bit better than the 9%ers I have on reserve. Jess T says if they made a purple beer without any fruit in it, I'd probably drink it. I think you're going to be out of luck there, but there's some really good purple beers, man. There's some good pink beers. Founders does a really good pink beer. Really good, actually. If you can get it on like nitro, it's delicious. All right, this is going to be our peanut butter stout. Oh, beautiful. Oh, look how dark it is. Oh, I love stouts so much. Oh. Does it smell like peanut butter? Purple's my favorite color too, Jess T. Oh my god, this smells like peanut butter. That smells like a Reese's cup. Oh, it smells so good. I'm going to let it settle for a minute. Patrice says, I've never had a peanut butter beer. Are they sweet? No, it tends to be more savory, actually. Tends to be more savory. And pro tip, and I learned this in college, you can put peanut butter in a coffee. Put peanut butter, like here's how you make it. You put your coffee, your cup of coffee in a blender, add like a spoon of peanut butter, blend it. So good. So good. I used to go to this coffee shop in college that doesn't exist anymore, sadly, but they would do a peanut butter latte. Oh, it was so good. But I strongly recommend it. And I like peanut butter beers. I think they're tasty.
Do you want to get in
Yeah. Well, a couple things. I think test scores obviously have their place in measuring student growth. And, you know, Joe pointed that out. They're going to be around. And for me, you know, philosophically, I know people fall in different places on this. I'm not against test scores. I think the debate around how test scores are used is probably much more where I would want to focus. And the reason I bring that up is not because of any value that I have towards test scores. It's actually based on my experience as a person who grew up in a low-income community.
Her lived experience.
Obviously, I had advantages. You know, I came from a two-parent household. My parents prioritized education. They did care very much about test scores, grades, and all of those things. And it's probably why I'm sitting here today. But I guess when I hear on one side of the continuum, which, you know, some people have posited, especially in this environment, you know, we need to just do away with test scores. It sounds good. Sounds like defund the police and all those other things. But when you really start talking about what that looks like and you look underneath the hood, I think it's challenged in a lot of ways.
Wait. That she just threw a curveball. I was not expecting that. Did you guys catch that? Like, some people say that we should get rid of test scores and it sounds really good. You know, it's like defunding the police. It sounds really good. Like, what? You live in Chicago. You live in Chicago and you want to defund the police? Are you shitting me? Let's just rewind and relive that moment. I love it when they throw me curveballs that I'm just not expecting because I took a sip of beer. Let's rewind.
I had advantages. You know, I came from a two-parent household. My parents prioritized education. They did care very much about test scores, grades, and all of those things. And it's probably why I'm sitting here today. But I guess when I hear on one side of the continuum, which, you know, some people have posited, especially in this environment, you know, we need to just do away with test scores. It sounds good. Sounds like defund the police and all those other things. But when you really start talking about what that looks like and you look underneath the hood, I think it's challenged in a lot of ways. And it really is because of the society that we live in. So I tell people, when you can convince me that an African-American boy from Inglewood on the south side of Chicago, who has done well in his high school experience, is put up against a white male student with the same credentials, save the test scores, that they're going to have the same shot in a university like Harvard or any other university, not to call them out, it's impossible. It's impossible. In the progress that we have
No, they're
made,
going to
in
have a
particular
better shot, to be
African-Americans over the
honest. They're
past
going to have
few
a better
years,
shot.
a lot of that has been documented by that progress and on assessments, on graduation rates, college matriculation and graduation rates, et cetera. And so I guess as a person who has had a very traditional African-American experience in this country, I find it hard to believe that I'm going to get a fair shake without proving that I'm supposed to be there. I find that hard to believe. Yeah. And sometimes, and this is going to be a little controversial, sometimes the same people who propose this are, they fall under this liberal category, but when really pushed to give up what they have for a Black or a Latinx student who comes from an economically disadvantaged community, they won't do that.
Why should they?
I'm not going to look at a student and tell them that test scores don't matter.
Is the superintendent, or excuse me, the CEO of the Chicago Public Schools, is she literally saying that she expects white students to give up their spots in college for a Black student? Is that what she just said? And she's mad that they won't do it? Now listen, man, I think many of us can agree that if a Black student and a white student have exactly the same test scores, exactly the same grade, that the Black student nowadays has a better chance of getting into Harvard. And we know that because we know what Harvard's admission status says. But do you know who has a worse chance of getting into Harvard? Asian students. It is harder for Asian students to get into Harvard than white students with exactly the same grade and exactly the same test scores. But we can't talk about that because, Asians only count when it's convenient for them to count.
Because I know that they do. Yeah. And I also know that parents have a right to know how their children are progressing. One of the saddest things that we experienced here in Chicago was the closing of the 50 schools, which, everybody has opinions about how that shook out. And I share a lot of them as well. But the one thing that stood out to me, there were many, but one thing that is pertinent to this conversation is how many of the parents didn't know how the school was performing. Yeah. Didn't know that they were doing what they were supposed to do, investing in their child's education experience, sending them to school every day, getting them the supplies they need, making sure they were on time and respect the teachers.
See them at a step.
And then at the end of that experience, didn't see the same outcomes for their kids. I think that the adults, me, teachers, principals, all of us included, who are paid to educate students, should do that. And we should prove and we should be held accountable to doing that. That's my personal belief. With that said, it can't be the only thing. Test scores don't tell you everything, and we have to start talking about the inputs. So what does teacher quality look like? Has this school had 3 different principals in the past 3 years? What kind of resources have this school been provided? What do the facilities look like? Do kids come in and feel bad because the facility looks like, whatever when they arrive? So I think we have to start paying more attention to context and some of those qualitative things as well. It can't be all about test scores, because even in some of our best schools with the highest test scores, we have other problems there. We have race relation problems. We have, substance abuse problems. No school is perfect. Yeah. And I think the last thing we have to start looking at is how well do we prepare our students and how do we treat them? We should be paying more attention to student discipline, student transitions. Does the school support students? I think those are also other ways we should measure success of a school outside of test scores. But I absolutely believe that student learning should be assessed, and educators should be held accountable to making sure that kids are successful.
Janice, I so appreciate that. Brenda, I know you want to get in on this question, but I want to ask you the next one. Is it all right?
Okay.
I so appreciate like the nuance in the answers that you've given though. I mean, this is not easy. The inputs have to be measured just as much as the outputs. Janice, thank you for that. And Joe, I think you're reminding us that it's always about some combination of data. It can't be just about the numbers. How are you hearing about the people? How are you hearing from the people represented in those numbers?
Right.
Hey, Andrew, I want to say I see you in the chat. Thank you for your email. I have received your emails, and I do have them reserved to look at. I just wanted to thank you for sending that stuff along.
Right? What story would they tell about the experience that they're having that led to whatever those outcomes are, good, bad, or somewhere in between? It's the weaponization of data, right, that I think we're great about. And that's our job. We've got to figure out how to stop that from happening in the future. Brenda, I know you want to get in. Say what you.
No, that's okay. I can wait for your question, and then I'll add in my little tweet.
I know you will.
About it before I answer the question.
So I'm going to move us. So we've talked about the vision. We've talked about what success looks like and how to measure it.
Cheers, Andrew.
What are the real problems we should be solving, right? Like problem definition matters a lot in this work. And we're all working hard, but are we working hard at solving the real problems that stand in the way of success? So I'm curious, from your perspective, what problem should we be solving?
Well, this goes a little bit to the testing question, I think, and how you measure success. And then I'll go to like what the input is. And the first thing is that I think I'll just say 3 things really quick about testing. I'm not, people know me, know I'm not a fan of standardized testing. It doesn't mean that I don't think that students should be assessed. I think that students should absolutely be assessed. They should be formatively assessed. That should be public data. I believe that parents should have it. Students should have it. They should know how they're doing on their competencies and as they make their trajectory. So that's important. But I think there is critically, and I think Janice, this is why she's doing the coherence across her curriculum, is because there is a gap between what is taught and what is tested, clearly. And teachers are in the classroom not teaching what is actually being tested. And then kids are being told that they are not proficient.
You know,
and I think
hang on. I used to buy this argument. I remember this argument when I actually worked at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and that was 20 effing years ago. I remember this argument that teachers are not teaching the things that are tested, and forcing standardized tests would force teachers to teach for the test rather than teaching. And I get that, but you know, the thing of it is, in knowing what's actually taught in schools now I kind of wonder, I'm like, are they not teaching what's being tested because they're teaching equity bullshit? Are they not teaching what's being tested because they're teaching anti-racist math? Are they not teaching what's being tested because they've integrated all this subject matter into their curriculum that has nothing to do with reading or writing or arithmetic? Why aren't they teaching what's being tested? Why is what they're teaching in the classroom so different than what's being assessed? Now, I think you can have a conversation about, do the assessments, and again, I've said repeatedly, and I'll say it again, I don't necessarily think that tests are the best indicator of knowledge. I think that, you know, some students are just not good test takers. But why isn't the assessment a good assessment? Why is there a difference between what the assessment is measuring and what is being taught in the classroom? What is being taught in the classroom that is different than what the assessment should be measuring? Sam says, I got it. Too busy teaching critical theory instead of literacy math. See, this is exactly the point. And it's like, so we really need to break this stuff down. It's like, do I believe the testing is everything and, you know, a bag of chips? No, I don't. But that's not the question we should be asking. The question we should be asking is, why is what's being tested for different than what's being taught in the classroom? And what is being taught in the classroom that shouldn't be, that has no relevance to the test at all? That's what we should be asking. And again, I feel for people like John. Like, I'm a terrible test taker. I never had to take tests. I'd have straight A's all around. I mean, I think a lot of people fall into this category. They give themselves anxiety. They freeze up. Like, I think that this is very common. So again, I'm not necessarily defending assessments as the end all be all, but I think we need to go one step beyond that and say, what are the teachers teaching that has no relevance to the tests at all? And why does it have no relevance to the test at all? Because if we knew that they were testing equity and diversity and nonsense, we might have a pretty different perception of it.
We don't do enough to very much understand the child's psychology behind what we do to third graders when we tell them they're not proficient, and then we tell them again in fourth grade, and we know that they've had a substitute teacher all year, or we know that, you know, the teacher's not teaching the curriculum or the standards, or we know that the assessments they're using, we've not done any interventions, you know, during the school year to help this child, or we know that this child was retained and they didn't get summer school. I mean, all of these other pieces that need to be in there to ensure that children don't fall behind the gaps. What are we doing with that assessment information, and how are we helping to support the child, and what are the stakes on that, you know, to the educator, and who's being held accountable? Like when children are retained, they are being held accountable more so than the adult that failed them, right? And so, you know, how is that fair, and how does that help the child? And then sometimes they're reassigned to that exact same teacher the next year. And so, you know, what kind of policies do you put in place so that teachers do not, you know, are held accountable for the success of children? I think that that is important. So to, you know, get at your point, like what is the bigger things that we should be dealing with right now? I think it is the structures and the policies and the systemic barriers put in front of children so they don't have opportunity and access, and we should apply a sharp lens.
Okay, Superintendent of the Boston Public Schools. The most important thing that we need to worry about are the systemic issues that are preventing access. No, the most important things you need to worry about is teaching kids how to read. That is the question that you need to worry about. Are you teaching kids how to read, how to write, and how to do math? That is all you need to worry about. I don't give two shits about the systemic issues involved. Are you teaching children how to read, how to write, and how to do math? That's it.
To that, and be bold in the actions that we take to change those. You know, for instance, we have an attendance policy here. 3 times that you're tardy, you get an absence. Then 3 times your absence, you automatically fail. So if you're a homeless kid and you've missed your time, you have 3 times you're absent, you've automatically failed. Like, why come to school then? Right?
Yeah, why come to school?
I mean, it's these kinds of things that are barriers.
Why are you failing kids for being absent?
You know, finding out that Black girls are retained 3 times more than white students are. You know, why? Going back.
You know, I always thought those policies were idiotic. To be really honest, I remember my school had similar policies. Like if you miss a certain number of times, if you have like 3 unexcused absences, you automatically fail the class. I'm sorry. I didn't even need to go to class to learn the knowledge. I didn't even need to go. I never did homework. I ended up graduating 3rd in my class completely by effing accident. If I had actually done the homework, I 100% would have been 1st in my class. I didn't even try in schools, and I didn't have to try. I didn't have to try to get an A on the test. I didn't have to try. I didn't even need to do the reading. I just showed up and I listened sometimes in class. But like, I never understood these idiotic policies of like 3 absences and you fail the class. Well, what if the student has the subject matter of those classes? What if the reason the students aren't in class is because they're bored? I used to get effing detention all the time for reading my own books in class, for reading books that I found enjoyable rather than the textbook and rather than listening to the stupid teacher who I knew more than anyway. Like, you don't really care about the knowledge that kids have if you're failing them for for a reason that has nothing to do with academics. Please. Please.
In the system to figure out what is it that we have in place, and then getting at those beliefs, those actions, those steps and behaviors that you need to then put in place with training for your teachers, training for your administrators, and making sure that they're taking those actions, because you're not just going to change their beliefs in a day. They got to have experiences that change then their behavior, that then change how they interact with children. And then just finally, I'll say, you know, I said before, it's an all hands on deck. I think that the nucleus of helping the child is helping the family. And I don't think that we can help children without supporting the family. You know, it always comes back to stable housing, food access, health access, job security for parents, and what are we doing to help in that whole
Wait.
entire
Wait.
system?
Why are the schools getting involved in job security for parents? Again, this is the point that schools are no longer just teaching people how to read, write, and do math, which are the basic things that the schools should be required to teach. Why are the schools getting involved in the employment of the parents? Hang on.
Administrators and making sure that they're taking those actions, because you're not just going to change their beliefs in a day. They got to have experiences that change then their behavior, that then change how they interact with children. And then just finally, I'll say, you know, I said before, it's an all hands on deck. I think that the nucleus of helping the child is helping the family. And I don't think that we can help children without supporting the family. You know, it always comes back to stable housing, food access, health access, job security for parents. And what are we doing?
Now, listen, I'm not going to argue that those things aren't important, but why are the public schools getting involved in that? That is not their business. This is okay. This is where we need to remind ourselves that public school teachers are government employees. They're government employees. The government screws up everything it gets involved with. So when did public school teachers and public school superintendents, or CEOs, as in the case of Chicago, when did they become social workers? Social workers are trained to be social workers. Now, I'm not saying that's the best situation either. Some social workers are great, some are less than great, fine. But why are the public schools, instead of teaching kids how to read, focusing on all of the things that are going on in the home? It is none of their business. It is none of their business. Every time you are giving, I'm getting a little fiery because I've had like a beer and a half. Every single time you are giving the public schools information about your life, that means you are giving the government information about your life that they do not need and is frankly none of their damn business anyway. The government is not there to help you, dude. The government would be no happier than if you became reliant on them to live. The only freedom that we ever really have is when we have the freedom to do for ourselves. That is it. If you don't have the freedom to do for yourself, to provide for yourself, to take care of yourself, then you aren't really free. You're relying upon these people to provide for you.
To help in that whole entire system, to help the child have a stable life home. So when they come to school, the only thing that they're worried about is doing their work or seeing their friends. It's not, they're not worried about what's going on in their neighborhood, what's going on with their parents, why, you know, not having enough food, not having a bed to lay their head. I mean, these are the things that we allow. In the US, we have the highest child poverty for, you know, a country like ours. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous that we allow these things to happen for our children.
Anyone else want to talk about what problem or problems you're trying to solve? And then I want to take a question from the audience. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I'll just play off of what Brenda said and to Janice's point too, because I think we're all focused our children in schools. That's why we're there. Was families and making sure that we are focusing on the families. And I want to call out our moms because they work so hard, and you know, they especially those single moms who
shout
are
out
trying
to
make
moms.
it happen.
Shout out
my
to
mom, my
moms.
grandmom, those Black women did what they could to make
That's
sure
a sign that he's
showed
not
up
about to
every
say
day,
anything of
was
substance,
clean,
by the way.
and was ready to learn. And our moms struggle because those are the ones who are at the homes educating children most, and then grandma stepping in when mom can. And I want to acknowledge them because I see you and I see the struggle. And I think for me, you know, my generation has changed in that, you know, I'm
he
first
doesn't have
generation college,
internet privilege,
and I'm able to provide my son now. We are with a quality home and a place where he can learn and do. And those women worked hard to give me that when I was growing up, and that shift happened because of a quality education. And so if we can turn our attention to moms and families and dads, because there are many dads out there who are working hard and trying to do it on their own, mostly moms, but I acknowledge all of you, because if we really want to focus on equity, we're in a country, the richest country on earth, many say, and we can sign a bill and dole out $2 and $3 trillion. There's no reason we can't educate every child extremely well. It makes no sense. Yeah. We should be having these conversations about Black kids and brown kids not getting a quality education, where teachers not being paid well, or violence and communities not being safe, when we can do the things that we do and a matter of a vote. So let's make education a priority. Let's pay teachers like they ought to be paid, so that they can go in classrooms and teach children extremely well. Let's support our schools so our children can get the kind of quality they need every day. Because to me, the issue is quality. When you go in schools that are mostly Black and brown, the resources aren't there, as Janice has said. The teachers, you have teachers in schools that with kids that look like me mostly are less experienced than other schools, largely because they're underpaid and overworked. So let's solve these issues from a policy perspective, but let's make sure we don't forget about our families, because that is where the rubber meets the road, is making sure that we support our moms. And so I just want to shout out to my mom, my grandma, rest her soul, and all the women who make it happen every day.
Right on. Here's to the moms. I think this is also a really interesting conversation, in that when I started out as an educator over 20 years ago, the way I was coached was that you should only try to influence what's in your sphere of control. Do you remember those coaching conversations, right? Where everyone's nodding? Yeah. And I coached other people.
Me too.
Thinking that way. Why am I regretting that now? It's not the way we should be functioning. Yeah. We have all this insight into students and families and what they need, and we have to be using it to influence this larger environment, right? All of the institutions that are responsible for taking care of families and children, as an example. We got to step up, right? We got to push harder, not just within, but without. And that actually feels really supportive of teachers to me too.
Yeah.
I feel like my teachers wanted to see me out there pushing harder.
Yeah.
Right?
Because everything falls on them.
Right, exactly. And we've talked a lot about what teachers need to do in this conversation today. The way I'm interpreting that is
Incognito says he knows math but not economics.
It emphasizes how important the teaching profession is.
Yes, exactly.
And how it all comes down to our teachers at the end of the day. So I so much appreciated it. But in these roles, the soups, we've got to be pushing on the larger institutions that surround us.
Yeah, teachers make it happen. I mean, I cannot preach that enough. And I'm a teacher at heart. And we better start respecting our teachers like we ought to, because those are the ones, and all of them, it's because of a white female
Sam
teacher
says this panel is clearly transphobic. I agree.
In high school, that gave me a good
ableist
foundation.
And
I don't care what
ageist.
color you are. We've got to make sure we put teaching as the most important profession. They train doctors, lawyers, and everybody else. We better respect our teachers like we ought to.
Yeah, this COVID time has been a time where we really, as a country, understand the critical role of teachers. And the critical role of public education. In not
You've
only
all
our
been
democracy,
exposed.
but
you all got exposed during COVID is what happened.
How we educate our kids, how we prepare for our future workforce, how we support our community culturally. All of the community events that happened at schools that you can't do, the athletics, and everything happens initially in schools, and that is because of teachers.
No.
And so, they are feeling now like they are not, they have this weight of the world on them. And they just feel, if you go and talk to a teacher right now in COVID, they are hurting.
Yeah.
They are hurting
Who cares?
for their kids.
Kids don't know how to read.
They want their kids to come to them. And they're hurting because they know they can't give them what they need.
They're not your kids. Did you see what she just said? The teachers are hurting and they want their kids to come to them. They're not your kids. They're not. You are state employees that are charged with teaching children how to read, how to write, and how to do math. That's it. Maybe some history if you're feeling saucy. Maybe you teach them some home ec, how to cook. Maybe you teach them how to do their taxes. Maybe you teach them useful life skills. Fine. But they are not your children. Hang on, I want to listen to this again just so we can get a really clear idea. They think they own your kids.
Of the community events that happened at schools that you can't do, the athletics, you know, and I mean, everything happens initially in schools, and that is because of teachers.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, they are feeling now like they are not, they have this weight of the world on them. And they just feel, if you go and talk to a teacher right now in COVID, they are hurting.
Yeah.
They are hurting for their kids because they want them
Their kids.
They want their kids to come to them.
Their kids.
And they're hurting because they know they can't give them what they need. I know as an educator, I am, you know, my special ed kids who are autistic, you know, our kids who have behavioral problems and need behavior supports, you know, our kids who are in foster care, kids who we know are being abused or neglected at home. You know, it is just, it's wearing on all of us because we want them back in. And so, you know, we've got to be able to solve this, throw everything at it. To see our, you know, leadership at the federal level not taking this thing seriously is just so disheartening.
When Trump was in office,
you know, it's just frustrating for us who are here in the trenches trying to, you know, just take care of our kids.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sam makes hang on.
Hour is
Sam makes a great point. They're almost done. We have 7 minutes left of this presentation, but Sam makes a great point. Can you imagine if the DMV people treated all of us like their drivers and wanted to butt into our personal lives to increase driver safety? Sam, that is exactly right. Teachers talk like this all the time. They are not your children. They're not your children. You have a job to do. Incognito says, so important they went to PR instead of a classroom. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's almost over. It is, we need a part 2, I think.
Oh,
oh sure, do a part
Let's
2.
make it a series.
We'll watch that too, honey. We'll watch it too.
I'm going to ask you just one last, like 60 seconds. I'm not going to actually time you, but I want you to try to hold yourselves accountable for this. A 60-second response to this question. What is your advice for leaders who want to step up and lead for equity, even if they haven't done so in the past? Who wants to do it? 60 seconds each. Joe, do you want to kick it off? I think if
I
can.
Like you're ready. I always want to.
I want to let the women go first.
You know, I have this little phrase I use. It's not your fault, but it's your fight. It's not your fault, but it's your fight. And I know that the issues we see in our country,
Sam, they never give solutions ever.
Slavery, and Black folks then started slavery. So I want to say that. Look, we've had so many issues in this country for years, and when we show up each day, we didn't start some of these issues that we have in our public schools, achievement gaps and other things. But when we sign up for this work, then it becomes our fight, and we have to grab that. I'm from the South. We grab bulls by the horn, and we've got to tackle these issues like our life depends on it. And I believe strongly that for those leaders who want to step up and lead for equity, take courage and heart and go in and get it done. Because listen, you are Superman and Superwoman, and your children are waiting on you. They're not waiting on somebody else. You're there. It's when you summon the wheel
Puerto Rico.
and get it done. It's not your fault, but it's absolutely your fight.
All right, right on. Brenda, how about you? What's your advice?
Well, I have a saying that goes, you know, measure everything in child benefit. At the bottom line, you're measuring everything in child benefit. So when the politics tell you you can't, you lean in, you stand up, you demand better, you open the door, you tell your truth, and you gather your data and your reasons why, and then you work a process. And that has to be a transparent process with people at the table, your naysayers and your supporters. But you have to bring those who are against you at the table to be able to move the agenda forward so that they can see the truth, not just from you top down telling them, but from everybody.
Yes, you have to brainwash everyone around you so that they agree with you, because that's the most important thing, isn't it?
And then I would say, don't expect the, the perfect to be the enemy of the good, or however that goes. That, you make progress and then you make more progress.
Yeah.
As you build confidence and trust within your community. So take a small win and then take a bigger win, but don't wait for that big win.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, Jen, how about you? What's your advice?
No, I'll build on what Brenda said about not trying to come up with the most perfect plan or the biggest idea that's going to change the world, because, we've been in this position for hundreds of years. We're not going to change it, during my tenure here as CEO. But you do have to have this idea of slow, sustained, continuous process over time. If you think like that, we're moving in the right direction. And my advice would, goes to a couple of people. Number one, if you're working in a school setting, whether that's K-12, pre-K through 12 or higher ed, race should be something that is talked about. And when we avoid that, we actually do everyone a disservice. And this isn't just about Black children or Latino students. This is everyone. Everyone benefits from having these open conversations. White students benefit from having a better understanding of the experience of minorities in this country. And so don't be afraid of that. I think you would see far more student engagement if you open up these discussions and get the training that you need. I know a lot of people are fearful of having these discussions, whether it's through a leadership perspective or as a teacher.
Yes, they're all just fearful.
So
it's not that they think it's bullshit. It's that they're fearful.
The other piece is just be authentic. I think that after the murder of George Floyd, we saw a lot of, platitudes and things. And, it only took me a couple of days before I was over it. But it's more than just saying it. It's more than a black circle on your Instagram. You really have to
look at her nodding. Jennifer's full on white savior. Full on white savior right now.
Okay?
Look at that nod.
And
look at that. It's like a full body fucking nod.
A leader or someone leading this work, don't ask the one or the handful of minorities to lead the work. It feels like the right thing to do and an empowering thing to do, but it actually puts a lot of pressure on them that's unwarranted. I think it's much more powerful to get the experts to come in, number one, because just because I'm Black doesn't make me an expert on Black people, okay? Right. There are people who are experts and know how to have these discussions across culture with different groups. And obviously elicit their input and engage them, but don't make the person feel like they have even more responsibility, because that's something that I hear a lot, especially from my friends who work in like corporate settings. They're all like the chief equity officer now, plus their other job, which is interesting.
Oh my God, you are all so inspiring to me. When we say leadership, right, we mean the people who are out there doing the work. Right? It doesn't matter what your title is, roll up your sleeves, dig in. Our children need all of us. I want to thank everyone who joined us today. I want to thank all three of you for being here and sharing your wisdom with us. Everyone stay in touch and check out hgsc.me/future to rewatch this and find out
all
about
right,
our
we're shilling now. We're shilling now. Well, that was an interesting presentation, if there ever was one. I am especially enthralled about the fact that they gave absolutely no actionable solutions whatsoever. But guys, that is our happy hour for this week. I hope you enjoyed the insanity that ensued. Yes, this was a real training from Harvard of all places. Now let me see. I'm trying to find, where the heck is my page? Hang on. Oh no, where the heck is the page that I wanted to show you guys? Oh no. Well, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you haven't mounted that like button yet, now is the perfect time to do so. And you still have time to sign up for my locals community. Make sure you join us for our craft or bitch craft that we are doing tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern time. It is an open Zoom where you can craft, you can bitch, we can talk about this stupid training, we can talk about any number of other things. The way you get access to that is by heading over to kb.locals.com/support. I may be a little bit tipsy because I'm a beer and a half in and it is very high alcohol content beer. But guys, I do happy hour every single Friday at 5 p.m. I also stream on my main channel, which is just my full name, Carlin Borisenko, at 5 p.m. every day, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We have got a great Super Bowl Sunday effed up news stream shaping up. Yes, we will be streaming on Sunday. And you can support the work I'm doing by joining my locals community as a supporter. You can join for $5 a month. You can also join for $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. You can also make a one-time gift. And please make sure, if you don't join, that's cool. But you do want to head over to my website, activelyunwoke.com. Lots of great resources over there for you right now, including this webinar from Nicole Solis that we just did today that teaches you how to write public records requests. Now, you can still get access to this recording. Just click on this here promo. And that is going to take you right to a recording. And then you click on that play button, you put in your name and your email address, you're going to get access to that recording. Nicole gave us lots of great stuff to think about. It was an awesome webinar, and we really appreciated it. And of course, we have a webinar coming up next week with Paul Rossi that you're going to want to sign up for. That webinar is going to be on February 17th at noon. Please make sure you join us. These are completely free events. Please make sure you share them out to your friends and family so that we can get as many people involved as possible. All right, guys. The Unwoke Army application is launching this weekend. Get ready for it. It's going to be great. We're going to do masterminds. We're going to put together knowledge bases of information. I'm really, really excited about it. It's time to move forward. It's time to put backstabbers in the past, and it's time to all move forward as a group that is focused on the goal. All right, guys, I will see you on Sunday. Have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.